the engine start is initiated by the pilot or during certain abnormal or emergency. The engine indications are provided on the EWD and on the ECAM engine page. The displays on the EWD are always displayed, while the engine page automatically appears on the SD when the engine start is initiated by the pilot or during certain abnormal or emergency conditions. The engine indications are provided on the EWD and on the ECAM engine page. The displays on the EWD are always displayed, while the engine page automatically appears on the SD when the engine start is initiated by the pilot or during certain abnormal or emergency conditions. Now, when the associated FADEC is not powered, the indications appear amber, but when the FADEC is powered, the indications appear in full color. On this frame, we show the left engine FADEC powered, and the right engine FADEC is not powered. Notice the X displays in the not powered readouts. Starting at the top of the EWD, we see the N1, exhaust gas temperature, or EGT, and the N2 for each engine. We'll describe the markings for each indicator. There are a few CFM engine types available. The primary difference between the engines is the FADEC program, which limits the maximum thrust. The engines provide flat-rated thrust, and the only difference between the thrust levels is for takeoff thrust. For all other flight modes, the thrust limits are the same. Now, to make all indications appear similar, the EGT displays are adjusted so the limits are the same for all CFM engine types. The MCDU status page displays the aircraft model and engine type that's loaded in the database. Since each aircraft is certified for only one engine airframe combination, operation of the aircraft is not authorized unless both engines are the same type. The FADECs monitor the engine types. If the FADEC programs do not match, the EWD caution message, engine type disagree, is displayed. The N1 display provides an indication of the fan speed and provides an indication of the primary engine thrust. It's displayed by a pointer and digital readout. The pointer and readout normally display in green, but will pulse amber if the N1 speed reaches the caution range. The maximum permissible N1 speed is indicated by a red arc. If the N1 exceeds the maximum range, the pointer and readout will pulse red, and a red tick mark appears to indicate the maximum exceedance value attained. The tick mark is normally cleared by maintenance. An amber tick mark indicates the maximum rated thrust that is available as computed by the FADEC. A white circle is displayed to indicate the position of the thrust lever. With auto throttles engaged, a blue arc displays the difference between the actual N1 and the commanded N1. This arc is a dynamic display that only operates while autothrottle is active. This N1 display shows the indications prior to selection of reverse thrust. When reverse thrust is selected, the blocker doors will be in transit. This is indicated by an amber reverse on the N1. Also, an amber tick mark displays maximum reverse thrust. When the reverser is fully deployed, the reverse display becomes green, and the pilot can modulate the reverse thrust from idle reverse to maximum reverse. Now note, if the reverser is unlocked in flight, this indication will flash amber momentarily and then display steady. The current EGT is normally displayed by a green pointer and digital readout. The amber tick mark displays at the start limit of 725 degrees Celsius during start. Now after start, this amber tick displays at the MCT limit, but is blanked during takeoff. The pointer and readout will pulse amber if the EGT exceeds the normal limit of 855 degrees Celsius, except when takeoff thrust is selected, when maximum reverse thrust is selected, or when alpha floor is active. A red arc displays the maximum permissible EGT. If the EGT exceeds the maximum limit of 890 degrees Celsius, the pointer and readout will pulse red and an ECAM message will appear. Note, the message is inhibited during takeoff and landing. Now, if an EGT exceedance occurs, a red tick mark will display at the maximum attained value. This exceedance display remains in view until maintenance action through the MCDU or a subsequent takeoff. The N2 is only displayed in a digital format and normally displays green on a black background. During engine start, the N2 background display is highlighted with a gray background. The background changes to black after start when the engine is stable. Now, if the N2 ever exceeds the limit, it displays red and a red cross appears next to it. The red cross remains in view until reset by maintenance or the next takeoff. If both engine N2 sensors on the same engine fail, the last digit will be dashed in amber. The indication remains usable, but provides reduced accuracy. On the right side of the EWD, the current thrust limit mode is displayed. The mode changes according to the phase of flight. Here we show a typical display before takeoff. The possible displays are toga, flex, max continuous thrust, climb, and maximum reverse thrust. To the right is the N1 rating limit. This limit is the current N1 thrust limit for the thrust limit mode. If the flex mode is selected, the flex takeoff temperature that the pilot entered on the MCDU is displayed in blue. Now, it is possible and normal that the value entered on the MCDU may differ slightly from the value on the EWD because of the difference in rounding logic between the two indications. Before we continue with more display descriptions, let's take a moment to describe how the thrust limit mode is determined. The determination of the thrust limit mode is different if the aircraft is on the ground with engines running or in flight. First, when the aircraft is on the ground with engines running, regardless of the position of the thrust levers, the limit is normally toga. However, if a flex takeoff temperature has been entered to the MCDU, the limit mode will display flex as long as the thrust levers are between idle and flex MCT. The thrust lever detents are shown on this frame. When the aircraft is in flight, the thrust mode corresponds to the detent of the most advanced thrust lever position, shown here as max climb thrust. For the in-flight thrust mode determination, if a thrust lever is set between two positions, the FADEC selects the rating limit corresponding to the highest mode. On the other hand, when idle is selected, the FADEC selects the mode of climb. For landing or rejected takeoff when maximum reverse thrust is selected, the thrust limit appears as shown here. Okay, let's continue with our description of the engine indications. The fuel flow for each engine and the fuel on board is displayed in green when the engine is running. When the engine is first shut down, this fuel flow shows amber crosses for 15 seconds and then displays 0. If there is a discrepancy between the real and the displayed EGT, N1, N2, or fuel flow values, an amber check message displays near the affected item. Before we leave the EWD, let's describe the green idle indication. It appears when both engines are at idle. Idle flashes for 10 seconds when it first appears and then remains on steady. Now, let's describe the indications on the engine page. The engine page shows the fuel used by each engine. It provides continuous information when the engine is running and stops when the engine is shut down. Thus, when the aircraft is parked, the fuel used display shows the fuel used on the last flight. The fuel used display is automatically reset to 0 when the associated engine is started. If fuel flow data is interrupted for more than 1 minute, the last 2 digits display dashes to alert the crew of the inaccuracy of the fuel use display. The fuel used value is also displayed on the ECAM cruise page, so you don't have to select the engine page to get this information in flight. The engine page also displays the engine oil quantity, the oil pressure, and the oil temperature. The oil quantity normally displays steady green, but pulses if quantity is low. The oil pressure normally displays steady green, but pulses if pressure is below an advisory limit or exceeds an upper limit. The oil pressure displays red if it drops below the minimum limit and an ECAM warning is delivered. The oil temperature normally displays as a steady green digital readout. The readout pulses if temperature is above an advisory limit. The oil temperature displays amber if the temperature is above the preset limit. The lower left of the engine page will display the nacelle temperature if it is excessive, but during start, this area displays the ignition, start valve position, and available bleed pressure. A pulsing nacelle temperature may indicate an engine fire or an air bleed leak. When the pilot initiates an engine start, the engine start information appears. Ignition appears in white, and the operating igniter, A or B, appears with a green letter. The green start valve position displays the valve position, either closed or open. The available air pressure for engine start displays in PSI. The pressure displays amber if the pressure is below a preset limit or an overpressure condition exists. The right side of the engine page displays the vibration indicators. There is an indicator for the N1 and the N2 of each engine. They're normally steady green, but pulse if the detected vibration level exceeds 5. The vibration information is also displayed on the ECAM cruise page. If the differential pressure across a main oil scavenge filter becomes excessive, an amber oil filter clog display appears for the appropriate engine. Likewise, if the differential pressure across a fuel filter becomes excessive, an amber fuel filter clog display appears. Now, let's answer some questions.